America. The price of a gallon of gas now is $3.98 per gallon. 60% of Americans say that $4 a gallon is the tipping point. We're 2 cents away. But has anybody asked the tipping point of what? Of what? Your life changes what happens to the country. The dollar is continuing to fall, and it is falling in a dramatic fashion. It's at a 3-year low. If you've been watching this program and you didn't dismiss me as a conspiracy freak, you knew this was coming, and here it is. It has been falling so dramatically that now the home of the peso, think of this, Mexico, is now buying 100 tons of gold. They say they need to get out of the dollar a little bit. Mexico, how many pesos does it take to buy 100 tons of gold? Also in the news today, Fatah and Hamas have brokered a deal. They become allies against Israel. And the deal? Brokered by our new revolutionary teenage friends in Egypt. And with Osama bin Laden, nobody's even talking about the expiration of the debt ceiling next week. Or, my favorite, the $200 billion in emergency funds that Timothy Geithner just kind of found. Where did I leave that $200 billion? Some slush fund, $200 billion. He tapped that to help us along the way. And then also he found some accounting tricks to tide us over until next week. By the way, that $200 billion, we've already spent it. When did he find it? Last week? The president also has declared now that he's made his decision. He's not going to release those pictures of UBL. Oh, okay. And by the way, an Arabic news agency is reporting now today that a senior Pakistani intelligence official said that one of Osama bin Laden's daughters has seen her father being shot dead by U.S. forces. She claims he was captured alive and then executed within the first few minutes of the operation. Who do you believe anymore? What do you believe anymore? Don't you see? The photos and the president's trip to, which I think is obscene, to Ground Zero, is a distraction from the real issues. I don't care what anybody says. This is not about poll numbers. This is misdirection. We could talk about the photos, whether we release them or not, and all the details. We could talk about it all day, and most of America is. But in my heart, I have to tell you, we have to get off of that. There is a more important agenda. And it is time we reset the conversation and the whole direction of anybody who has been concerned. It's time to start moving forward. I used to say on this program, watch the other hand. They're doing this, but what are they doing here? I can guarantee you, while we're focusing on Osama bin Laden and the pictures, they're doing other things here. But I think it's about time we turn the tables. It's about time that they start worrying about watching our hands. Because it's about time that we put our hands to work in a creative way. March 2009. It marked the beginning of the 9/12 Project. I had the idea and I gave it to you and you took it and ran with it. Well, let me ask you, what has it become? What have you done? A lot. The 9/12 Project is each person made of it. It's kind of like life. So what is it that you have made? My guess is that if you made it about politics and protest, your groups now are starting to dwindle and struggle. It may have even struggled with power wars that's happening in tea parties and everything else. Many, no doubt, have been swallowed up by tea parties, which many of those have been swallowed up now by GOP operatives, and people are starting to question. Well, now that the congressional election is over and the Tea Party has accomplished what they set out to do, what has changed? The GOP still struggles to find a man or a woman to match the times. I mean, who are you going to vote for? Who are you excited about? Donald Trump? Got to find somebody that matches the times. But the parties continue to dismiss or destroy anyone who can truly lead in a different direction. Meanwhile, the countdown clock of our destruction continues to tick dollar by dollar, right by right, and lie after lie. The media They still refuse to admit that the spontaneous revolutions brought on by the youth of the Middle East were no such thing. The democratic revolutions always end the same way, as ours almost did 225 years ago. They end in chaos or a tyrant with a different face. The Middle East, mark my words, is headed towards a united union of sorts. It will be a caliphate, one that is defined by extremism, misery, and death, the likes of which the world hasn't seen perhaps in centuries. As new leaders, strong enough to control the situation, rise, so will the brutality. Honest liberals will admit this, as this was their argument against the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. The world will be far too familiar with the chant, "This is what democracy looks like," only then to wake up from the stupor of denial and remember, as with all things, democracy is what you make of it. What are they going to make of it? Iran, remember, is a democratic state. They stone homosexuals, victims of rape they kill, and all those who speak against that brutality. We, on the other hand, in America, are not, nor have we ever been, a democracy. But most don't even know that anymore. And that's why the world is about to change. And those who are the best organized as the battle begins will find themselves in power. For better or for worse, the campaign promise that President Obama will keep is the fundamental transformation of America. He also promised something else, and it will be fulfilled. The transformation of the entire world. It's happening. Our dollar is collapsing. Jobs are becoming more and more scarce. Corruption is being institutionalized. Our faith is being rotted from the inside. Our children are being indoctrinated into the world of Marxism. Our nation's unions are becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish from the brown shirts or the communist thugs of the last century. And our president is using our military as a personal hit squad. And I'm not talking about UBL. I'm talking about the targeting and trying of killing Gaddafi and his children the same weekend we killed UBL. America, nothing is happening by chance. And those who thrive off chaos, or who will just never let a good crisis go to waste, have studied revolutions their whole lives. This is well thought out. All of the money literally in the world is up for grabs. And a warning to those who think they are going to be a part of the new structure of power. Warning, you will find yourself in the end betrayed by global thieves. The structure and the money fueling this revolution is not coming from the people. It's coming from the uber rich. I'm talking about the uber rich. And the giant global corporations, the same ones that the anarchists and progressive youth are being taught to despise. The leaders of this death cult used to say, "Oh, don't trust anyone over 30, man." Well, maybe we should point that slogan out to the new followers. Yet, with all of the clear, obvious signs of institutional death of America, or transformation, most Americans are either sleeping in self-imposed ignorance or have chosen to believe the lie that they can save themselves or their pension or their job by embracing the agents of change and revolution. What they refuse to admit is that the only change from the last administration is a matter of speed and boldness. They are not fighting for the people or the nation's best interest in Washington. Some are, many are not. The facts are that Bush started TARP, but in the last 2 years, has that gone away? In the last 2 years, everybody was fighting with George Bush. He's in bed with big business. Has big business lost its grip in Washington? It hasn't. It has tightened it. It has been entrenched and rewarded. GE pays no tax despite record earnings. GM is leeching the worker. and should be the poster child of corporate welfare while it introduces the new green Chevy Volt. What a sham. The only thing green are the Treasury notes that are going to the unions and the kickbacks now going again to General Electric. Wall Street and the large corporate banks are more powerful and more wealthy, as they are the real recipients of the trillions of dollars currently being printed by our Treasury. Through the actions of Washington and the Fed, the biggest of all corporations, the Fed, the only group losing power is the worker. The people are being impoverished. They are losing the value of their homes, 401ks, and most of all, the people are being impoverished in voice. Boy, does it sound like a Marxist dream? What, the monologue I'm giving? No. It is a libertarian dream. Set yourself free. America, it is time to choose sides. And there are only two choices in the end. One, loss of liberties for security. Be it financial or physical. I don't want to lose my pension. I don't want to lose it. You will give your liberty away to save something. That's choice one. Choice two, loss of financial and possible physical security for liberty. Which will it be? Now, the vast majority of Americans will see this as an obvious choice. The answer has already been given by the people over and over and over again. They choose one. For your safety, for the children, for the auto workers, for the financial institutions. We've got to avoid another Great Depression, another fuel shortage. Bit by bit, we have answered this question, and we have invested more and more in the agents of change, which are the agents of destruction. For most, the first option will require no more work, and that's why they like it. They're either tired or lazy. And you don't have to think about it anymore. They'll do it. Just let them handle it. That's what I voted for. I gave them my vote and my contribution. It's a continuation of George W. Bush's 9/11 solution. Just go shopping. All people are required is that they go shopping. And that you continue to fight the same tired battle. You know, the one that ends with anybody who disagrees with your side are bigots or racists or just mindless shills for the corporations. These corporations, really? I'm standing against those giant corporations. How can I be a mindless shill for them? Now, for those who answered number two, this is when the real work begins. Because you're going to ask yourself, now it's pretty easy to be for liberty. But when money is tight and you're losing your job and you're friendless, why is liberty worth suffering for? How can there possibly be personal freedom without financial freedom? Are the poor truly free? What is freedom? Do I really want it if responsibility is also required? What does my life look like if I choose liberty, real liberty? And how could I possibly convince my spouse or my friends that this is the right choice? These are the same questions every great movement has struggled with every time. The answers have to be found by each of us as an individual, and then deeply rooted and planted here by people who have searched their hearts and then joined their hands. These answers are not going to come from Washington. I mean, have you heard their choice already? It's one. I mean, if you believe their answer is no, liberty, really? Have they talked to you or preached about preparedness and self-reliance? How can you have liberty if they don't say prepare to you? Have they talked about those things, or have they just been a part of the nominal spending cuts, the birth certificate circus and regulation? Who is standing there to slash the vines growing around the legs and the throats of the average person that built this country? Political 9/12 and Tea Party groups. You have played a historic role, and you will continue to be a powerful, powerful force of freedom. Historic role, and you will continue to be a powerful, powerful force of freedom. But this is a new era. And since no one else will, I will call for the beginning of the Third Great Awakening. The first preceded the revolution and set Americans free, but not all. Then came the Second Great Awakening, which set the slaves free. The third shall do the same to a new and growing global pharaoh state. I'm just a regular person just like you. I am a dad and a citizen. But I echo the words of William Travis at the Alamo. Come to the aid of liberty with all dispatch. Come to her aid, and let your weapons this time be the truth, compassion, honor, courage, and a firm reliance on divine providence. I started to say, before Obama was even a nominee, that the unsinkable White Star liner that has always been America has hit an iceberg. And as with all icebergs, the real danger was still just below the surface, as was the damage to our beloved vessel, our country. Our last few captains have either been in denial or in league with a competing ship line, as they have been urging the passengers, go back to the gaming tables, go back to the bars, or go back to bed. We've got it. We've got it. That's why I've asked you on this program over and over again, begin to build lifeboats for others. And do not allow hate or anger to build towards the crew or to your fellow passengers who have mocked, marred, or tried to obstruct your efforts. I told you that there would come a time when the water would begin to come up, it would begin to rise, and the ship would begin to list or rise up out of the water. And that's when people would rush to the lifeboats in panic. And the crew would say, no, no, don't go there. And you would have to say, please get into the boat. That time is not here, but it is quickly approaching. And unlike the movie Titanic, those with the keys to the gates, do you remember that scene to the third-class cabin? They're not trying to open them and then drop them. They're trying to close them and lock them. As the consigliator of George Soros said as he delivered his thinly veiled threats to me and my crew, the ship of a new world order has already set sail, and you are either on it or you are not. And I responded, I am not. But don't let the message, his real message, get lost. The rescue ship has already set sail. Well, who is on that rescue ship? Were you even offered a cabin or a chair? Do you know who built it? Where it's going? The elites will still deny that there's even a plan for a new global order, let alone that it's already left port. And if they eventually claim that you're aboard, ask yourself, who puts another person on a boat to an unknown destination without consulting them first? You would think that those who just can't see past the slavery of colonial America would be able to recognize their current role as either slave master, slave trader, or a slave. Believe me, in the end, those who are on that ship, unless you're in the captain's cabin, you will be locked behind a gate with a steerage as your useful role of diversion comes to an end when they no longer fear exposure. We as friends, we as family, as neighbors and Americans, we must man our posts with malice towards none and help guide those who will otherwise be lost behind the gates of so-called security, and chart a different course, using the light of freedom and liberty as our pole star. I warn you, as I start to go down this course, it's not going to make you more popular. And you're going to be more tired. It's going to take more than an hour of TV every night, or a meeting with a group of like-minded people, or a gift of a pocket constitution. Inflationary pressures on food and fuel, they are going to make your life and your neighbors' lives much more complicated in the coming months. and they will serve as a powerful distraction in your life. That's why you must prepare now for the road ahead. More in a second. I'm talking to you tonight not necessarily about the news of the day, but the news of the decade. The things that have happened in the last decade and where we are headed as a nation. I asked you last night to tell me, what is the competing idea to statism, globalism, Sharia law, to Marxism? What is the competing idea? You'll say it's America. We'll get to that here in a few minutes. What I'm asking you to do now is to ponder the things that I have said over the last 2 years and shore yourself up, because there's a new approach coming that will encompass everything that we have worked on here, from the 9/12 project to the 40-day and 40-night challenge to E4, which I introduced at the beginning of this year. It is not going to mean an end to protests, but I believe a fundamental transformation of the movement. It will not mean that you have to adapt your schedule, but transform your life. It will not be for the faint or half-hearted. It will require those who wish to become more than they are, or their country more than it is, or more than they currently believe they can be or their country can be, to become the lion-hearted, the giants that we spoke of there in the mall on 828. Those who have already started this journey towards greatness and true liberty, those who now walk the path to the bright side of history, those who hear the clarion call will center themselves in the values and the principles that built this country, but will feel pushed now to the edge of their comfort zone and pushed to the edge of society by those masquerading as centrists. You must be ready. I ask you tonight to double your efforts on E4, to know who it is you really serve, E1, enlightenment, to know history, E2, and the power of the individual, because the last one is entrepreneurship, to create something positive. I'm about to call on you. The country doesn't need any more followers, it needs leadership. Will you lead? I'm going to stop preaching to you every night. I'm going to start rolling up my sleeves and stand not here, but with you. And I invite you to stand with me. Together, we will be the refounders with our children. We will be the human chain guarding equal justice. And together, be the men and women of merit that George Washington called to service. George Washington implored the revolutionaries who fought against corruption and cronyism, the big business of their day. And they fought. And then they went to the Constitutional Convention. And he said these words, "Let us now raise a standard to which the wise and honest can repair." He knew that it would fall in disrepair. And it was a promise to them that if they would do the hard thing then, we would do the hard thing now. Let us do the hard thing. Let the honest and the wise rise up now, first to repair themselves, to make sure that they are honest and that they are wise, so they may be worthy to do His work and repair this standard. So once again, the whole world can see the true flame of freedom that man has so rarely enjoyed. There is so much that... Look, do you remember when we were making fun of community organizers? It was, what, 2 years ago? Do you see the power of something as small and as silly as acorn? Out of acorn grows a mighty oak. I know some of the things that I talked to you about, the E4 project and everything else, might seem silly to you. Please don't dismiss them. Right before I walked over here today, I put together a message because I knew I wasn't going to be able the time to be able to tell the whole story. It's a story of a woman who took something I said on this program, something we mentioned just a few times on this program. You may not have even noticed it, but she did. She was listening and she was watching. And she took that and it completely changed her life, along with dozens of others. But it changed one person in particular that she never saw coming. Check her story out at glennbeck.com. Back in a minute. I have to tell you, as I was preparing today's show, I said to my staff, there is absolutely no reason this show is the most successful show in the history of cable news at 5 o'clock. Zero reason for that, because everything we do goes against common sense and we break every television rule. Right now, we should be analyzing Osama bin Laden's death and every last bit of it. Last night I was on Judge Napolitano's show on Fox Business, and he was worried that the White House is now using executive orders to kill people. And we are in Libya. Now what about Osama bin Laden? Well, as I was walking up to the studio, I had to decide exactly where I stood on that. And I realized I know where I stand, but you can't tweak this system 5%. The whole system is so far out of line, you need to reset the system. For better or for worse, we've been telling you that the world is about to change. There are the naysayers, and I hope to God that I'm wrong, and I mean that. But nothing is happening by chance, and I believe that those who are the best organized will find themselves in power. But if I ask you to organize, what are you organizing on? I mean, what do you even believe in anymore? Let me ask you this question, and I mean this sincerely. I want you to ask yourself tonight, who are we? Who are we? Who are you? What is it you believe in? I don't know who we are as a nation anymore. I don't. I don't recognize us. I don't even know who our friends and allies are anymore. I don't know why we have some of these friends and allies. Saudi Arabia, we know why they're our ally. That was oil. That was it. This was terror. Pakistan, that's it. But they don't have anything in common with us. Please. France? Oh, thank you for the Statue of Liberty. That's fantastic. You know, they're moving towards the foe. They're thinking now about getting out of NATO. At least the woman who would, Le Pen, who would beat Sarkozy today, says they're getting out of NATO and make an alliance with Russia for oil. Germany is moving towards Russia. These guys are over. These guys are pissed at us. That's why you're not pumping any more oil. And Pakistan, we've just screwed too. These guys are like the little black sheep. You want to talk about being alone, Tea Party members. Anytime you start feeling down, imagine the little box that Israel is in. Friendless. I mean, I think you get the point here. But why is all of this changing? What is happening? Who are we? And what are we becoming? If you really want to know who we are, you have to start back at the beginning. What separated us from the rest of the world? Was it our land? Was it our car, our house? Or was it something else? What makes us uniquely America? If you're the president, you'll say there is no difference between us and Spain except arrogance, really. It's just the arrogance of, I'm Spanish, whatever. Well, people are people, but there was a new and revolutionary idea here in America. And maybe we need to go back to that idea. So what was the idea? The idea that it was man can rule himself. But how did he do it? Remember, America is great because America is good. What makes us America, really, and unique? Right now, I read a story today that Americans are just killing killers. That was the spin on one of which one was it that said that? One of the news shows said America's just a bunch of thugs killing killers. Osama bin Laden. That's why we need a revolution. No. Don't you see everything that is making us America is being dismantled? You may have a different list, this is just mine. That we're individuals, that we're pioneers, we're dreamers, we're courageous, charitable, fair-minded, and people of faith. Well, I put this list down yesterday, and I started looking at this list, and I thought to myself, really, are we individuals anymore? Are we individuals? Look what our system is doing. It's all about collective salvation. The people or the workers. It's them. It's us against them. The rich versus poor. The blue collar versus the white collar. Politicians against the people or the people against the politicians. You can't do it on your own is the rallying cry. It's no longer yes I can. It's yes we can, meaning the government now. 1 out of every 7 Americans are on food stamps. That is where you arrive after saying yes we can. The next 2 are pioneers and dreamers. Are we that? We're not pioneers anymore. We're dreamers, but we're daydreamers. Not dreamers. We're losing the ability to even think out of the box. You have to be concerned when our teenagers flood the internet to Google, who is Osama bin Laden? I bet they can name all the Real Housewives of New Jersey, but they don't know who Osama bin Laden is. That is why Van Jones and Al Gore have said, you know things that your parents just don't. That's why they're targeting our children, because they know they're empty vessels. Because of regulation, you know that it's now damn near impossible for the Bill Gates of the next generation to create another Microsoft in their basement. You can't do it. Courageous? What does courage even mean anymore? Courage to stand and go to a tea party. That was pretty courageous for a lot of people. Courage to stand if you're in a union and to say, I disagree. How about courage to stand alone? Tell me how full of courage is a country when they are all folding to political correctness. As individuals, we need the intestinal fortitude of Israel. You want to be alone? Be them. They're surrounded, but they're going down swinging. Well, maybe we're charitable. No. Charity is under attack now as well. Charity is, that's the IRS. How about fair-minded? Are we fair-minded? No, not anymore. Americans aren't fair-minded. They're racists. That's why we have to have this institution over here for social justice, because they're not fair-minded as individuals. You got to have some NGO or special interest group to provide that, so we treat each other right. Are we people of faith? Well, we might be, but do we actually practice it? Atheists and political correctness and sloppy people of faith. Social justice. By the way, when I say atheist, I don't have any problem with an atheist. It's the militant atheist, or the militant Muslims, or the militant Catholics, or Mormons, or militant anything. My way or the highway. That is not America. You know the best way to teach people about your faith, or absence of? Live it. People will see that you're happy and want to know what it is that makes that guy so happy and strong. I believe individuals will find their own way, or they will not. But I do know this. I can't save you, nor can anyone else. You have to choose to find the truth. You have to choose to apply it. You have to choose to be who you are meant to be, not who you've allowed yourself to become. And not be part of a stagnant collective sitting around waiting for some savior to save you, some government official to walk in and do it for you. So, you're going to change things. You have to know who you are. It's time we decide. More in a second. To rebuild something, you have to figure out who you were in the first place. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but we're living in a bullying society now. If the government doesn't get its way, the response is get that CEO fired. They're now going after a CEO of a major drug company. He's a conservative. He's outspoken. They've threatened him before during the healthcare thing, and now they're threatening the board. They say, you get rid of him or we'll do no business with you. And for a drug company, the government saying they're not going to do business with the drug company, that's death. As Andy Stern said, we watched how they voted. We know where they live. And they will use the power of, the persuasion of power. Is this who we've become? How much more do you take? Is this really the land of the free and the home of the brave? The fifth most searched question on Google on Sunday was, who is bin Laden? Nearly 1 in 5 searches for Osama bin Laden were by teenagers. 25% of all searches overall for Osama bin Laden came from those under 24. They didn't even know. How are we going to expect them to defend freedom? Do they even remember what real freedom is? I don't. I don't even know if I've ever had it in my lifetime, but I had it closer. September 10th, 2001. Do you remember what it was like to go into an airport and not have the lines of security and take off the belt to be able to go to the ticket counter and to the gate? Do you remember what that was like? Do you remember what real freedom was like when we were kids? When our parents would let us play outside. We'd get up at the crack of dawn on a Saturday, and we'd race to do our chores. We're like, come on, Mom. She's like, finish your chores first. And then you'd finally finish, and you'd be gone. And the screen door would slap against the front of the house, and all you'd hear is her voice saying, be home in time for dinner. Freedom for parents to do that? We don't have any thought that we're ever going back to that again. We don't have any thought that we could ever be in an airport again without those long lines. Come on. We have no thought that we're going to be able to go back to the way things were at some time where we were decent. So I ask you, well, who are we? Are individuals and pioneers and dreamers and people of courage? Is that what they want? Charitable people, fair-minded people, people of faith in God, is that where you're headed? Isn't it time we square our shoulders and make sure first that we are those things in our own personal life? So you have to do that first, and then the next step is define the idea. What are we moving towards? Don't tell me that we're moving towards 1776. Don't tell me that we're headed towards 1791. We want some of the ideas of 1791. We want those, a restoration of those ideas. But we want something more than that. The ideas of 1791, along with the understanding and the vision of 2091. That's what we must work together to build. And I again ask you to join me on a personal journey over the next few months. This is a journey like any marathon or any mountain climb. You have to get into shape first. If you're not a member of a group, join one. If you haven't taken the 40-day, 40-night challenge, take it. If you haven't read a book, read one. The journey for America is about to end or begin. A bit about personal courage. I want to tell you about a guy that is becoming a friend of mine, Pastor John Hagee. He started a group called Christians United for Israel 30 years ago. This is courage. He decided to host a night to honor Israel, bringing Christians and Jewish communities together in San Antonio, Texas. And during the event, there was a bomb threat. All of the Christians, he said, made a beeline to the front door. But the Jews stayed put. Apparently, they were used to it. He had only planned on doing it once, but that night he told his wife, we're going to do this next year and the year after and the year after that until they get the message. We're not going to sit down. And that's what they did. That's courage. I am proud to say that he hasn't sat down, and I am beginning to stand up. I'm going to stand next to Pastor Hagee. I will be speaking at the event this year in Washington, D.C. in July. Go to glennbeck.com for all the details. And another story of courage, Bonhoeffer. I've talked about this book on the show, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It was a book written by a friend of mine, Eric Metaxas. This book changed my life. But congratulations to Eric Metaxas. It just won the Christian Book of the Year. It's time to change your life. Mike Tyson, when he goes into the ring without getting into shape, he fails. Remember Buster Douglas, Tokyo 1990? Get into shape.
0365.
On Friday, I'm going to introduce you to some teachers who are frustrated and are willing to speak out. It's a show you do not want to miss. Courage. From New York, good night, America.